dia e sejam bem-vindos ao segundo dia do FIWARE Camp Madeira. O meu nome é Marco Vieira, venho a substituir o secretário-geral da ACIF, que hoje, por questões de Covid, não consegui comparecer aqui esta manhã. Para hoje temos uma manhã, novamente, com alguns oradores interessantes e internacionais. Vamos começar com o David Aveiro aqui na apresentação do Colmi, um projeto bastante interessante. Vamos ter uma mesa redonda aqui com alguns players do Funchal, que julgo que vão-nos trazer mais alguns apoios do que se está a fazer na parte da logística e do transporte. E depois teremos aqui dois keynotes, duas pessoas referenciadas aqui, tanto pela iShare como pela FIWARE Foundation, o Gerard Van Hoven e o Alberto Abela, para termos aqui um dia repleto de informação e espero que gostem. Just a small notes in English now for our invited. So thank you for being here in the second day of the FIWARE Camp Madeira. So today we have a good session with starting with the round table. With some players in Funchal from the logistics and transport, and then we have people from iShare Foundation and FIWARE Foundation. So welcome and enjoy the day.
So we move forward to presentations, and to present us the Call Me project, we invite to the pulpit David Aveiro from Arditi.
Good morning, everyone. I am a researcher at Arditi and also teacher at the University of Madeira. And in my role as a researcher, I'll be presenting a bit of what we're doing here with FIWARE Technologies in the Call Me project or experience. It's an abbreviation for Collaborative Microhubs. This project this experience comes in the context of a H2020 European project called I4Trust. And in this presentation, I will be speaking a bit about the I4Trust project itself, the consortium, and several aspects of the Call Me experience, and also the open call, the second open call this project opened for new opportunities and experiences like the one we are doing now. So the I4Trust project is all about data spaces so that there can be effective and trusted data sharing between different stakeholders. The idea is to drive the development of new services around data value chains across multiple industries. The idea is to have tools, education, and initial funding for experiences and creation of data spaces so that there can be effective data sharing between different partners, companies, etc. And the idea is that there can be the emergence of collaborative SMEs, ecosystems, and also digital innovation hubs. The network of digital innovation hubs that is being created can also support the enabling of these data spaces. So the I4Trust consortium that is leading this H2020 project is formed by the FIWARE Foundation, which is the main actor, our partner that also is the reason for us being here today in this FIWARE camp. Also the iShare initiative and also the funding box. I'll introduce briefly each of them. So FIWARE Foundation was established by European industry for driving the definition and encouraging the adoption of open standards in IoT-enabled smart services. The idea is that people can rapidly and fast time to market build and develop intelligent solutions in multiple fields of activity or business. So the FIWARE technologies, FIWARE is itself a framework or a set of components, open source components, and all of them integrated that can really accelerate the time to market of digital solutions. The iShare initiative is created by different international partners in the logistics area. It started in the Netherlands. And the idea is that there can be in logistics chains and value chains sovereignty and confidence in data sharing between different partners. So it's basically a set of standards and also technology. The idea is that stakeholders can have a uniform set of agreements or schemes between them, so in terms of data schemes and also access and sharing between the companies. So in practice, a set of operational agreements and organizational agreements. And it enables the management of the different information entities involved, also that data can be shared with security and trust, also controls and the definition of policies. And there are basically a set of satellites or servers that can validate in a certain network of patterns different policies and different access control authorization to data. And then the funding box is an entity and a platform that allows communication and sharing of technical knowledge and opportunities. It's a platform that allows the promotion of funding for innovation, also accelerate the access to finance, create and promote knowledge and networking ecosystems in different areas, and ensure investment security. They have a huge infrastructure, administrative infrastructure, which in this case, in the context of I4Trust project, one of the roles they have is providing all the infrastructure and support for the open calls that resulted in these experiments. So the project I'm presenting, Call Me, came in the context of the first call of the I4Trust project, in which 226 SMEs run for the call, together with 42 digital innovation hubs. So this was the total set of companies. So it's not the total of consortiums that went. If I'm not mistaken, about 60, right? Around 60 consortiums divided in this number of companies and digital innovation hubs. And out of these many proposals, only 13 were selected for funding in these different teams, agri-food, etc. And our project, Call Me, is in the field of smart logistics. So what is exactly Call Me, or Collaborative Logistics Microhub? So what is the problem being addressed by this experiment? It's all about last mile delivery. The last mile delivery is basically when the express delivery companies are delivering packages door to door. And today, with the increased demand created by the booming of e-commerce activity, this last leg of package delivery is typically the one that costs more. For a different number of reasons, since the distance between the warehouse and the receiver's doorstep, also the highly manual type of work involved, and also in terms of environment, it's the most impactful part of the delivery process, in terms both in traffic, also in terms of pollution, and even also accidents. To address this problem, we propose this concept of a collaborative logistics microhub. So in a summarized way, we can say that the microhub articulates the local last mile delivery and freight forwarders resources so that they can offer a combined and much more efficient solution for the last mile delivery phase. So any leg of this last mile delivery phase or process can be done by any of the participant operators, which normally compete among themselves, but in the context of this microhub will cooperate. So it's a co-opetition situation. This allows that the participant operators can tackle many issues, but we highlight two dimensions in particular. One is the optimization of the logistics operations, where the hub allows them to maximize the usage of their collective resources, reduce the overall costs of deliveries, reduce the time consumers wait for their packages, and increase the frequency and range of deliveries in their covered area. So by sharing their resources, their vehicles, they can cover the same distances, the same deliveries, and optimizing less kilometers traveled, less fuel spent. So this leads to really a reduction in the environmental impact, which is really important in these days where climate change is getting worse and worse. However, the main challenge for realizing a collaborative logistics microhub is the trust between the different partners that normally compete among themselves. So how can they share data in a transparent and trustable way? So let's see how we will contribute to that. So the idea is that the data is shared, because if you need to share resources for the delivery, you have to share data for that. But that is done by guaranteeing the confidence and the trust between the participant operators and the collaborative microhub. So how is transparency guaranteed? So every operator will have access to be able to see and validate all relevant operational data using blockchain technology that provides a very high level of confidence about data integrity. So blockchain, for the ones that don't know, is the main platform where the crypto coins are based, but is also used as a distributed ledger technology, or transparent and immutable database that can be shared between different partners. And so, since the data is transparent, immutable, this can enable the necessary trust between the partners. And regarding this availability of data, the solution that we will develop will guarantee that critical data is not dependent on a single point of failure, and is always available for every operator to carry their activities independently. So everyone can know the whereabouts of their and only their packages by clients and retailers, or the ones that they are delivering for another partner of the microhub. Besides guaranteeing this trust and access between the hub partners, our solution also guarantees that also the final clients will get accurate information regarding deliveries, while maintaining the information private to those with permission to access it. Finally, for the challenge to be viable, every participant must also have the same collective meaning of the exchange data. So our experiment guarantees that all participants have a collective semantic model of the data being shared among them, so they speak the same language in terms of the data, thanks to the standards that are used. So the consortium that integrates this experiment is led by Logimad. It's a logistics company here in Madeira that provides last mile delivery service. We also have the honor of counting with Logislink, the main logistics operator in Madeira Islands, which we have here, one of the administrators present today for a round table, Sergio Matos. Thanks for being present. Also have the company Transbag, another last mile delivery company. Wheezy, it's a retailer, web-based retailer that offers services to any company to sell goods online. So this e-commerce platform will allow different retailers to use our technological platform. We also have a local SME, Loja do Chá, which sells different products related to tea, and they are a direct-to-consumer retailer selling mostly in Madeira, so they will serve as also a partner to test our platform. We also have the Key Technologies company, which is specialized in blockchain technologies, is bringing that knowledge here to our consortium. And finally, the Smart Islands Hub, which I am representing here through Arditi, which is the FiWARE iHub, or integrates a FiWARE iHub. And it's also an ambassador of the I4Trust project and is participating in this consortium, and is contributing with know-how in FIWARE technologies for the implementation. So this image represents the distribution of participants in the experiment within the data space to be created. So the logistics operators own their own operational data, and the retailers own their delivery information. As such, they are all present in data owner space. The data provider role is taken by all the 3 logistics operators, where we will implement instance of the FIWARE context broker. They will provide to the data space the information of the packages to be delivered by the MicroHub that have been contracted to them. That data will be shared using a 4th context broker, shared between the operators and implemented in our Smart Islands Hub, where the other logistics operators and retailers will access the data depending on their applied access policies. So all the participants need to be identity providers so that their workers and collaborators and clients can have access to the data they should have. And also the iShare satellite that will be provided by us, the Smart Islands Hub, will provide the needed trust in the whole environment by validating all these identities and also the data access policies for all participants. So in this case, the iTrust technologies, which join both FIWARE components and iShare components, in this case the satellite, is allowing the creation, the governance of this data space. And also the blockchain component will help to notarize all data and make it available in a transparent and trustable way. So all transactions are recorded in a very coherent and trustable way. So we are, in terms of concrete components of FIWARE, we are using the Orion context broker for the context information of packages, the API umbrella, also the KeyRock identity manager, and the Canis major component, which is connecting to the blockchain framework to be used. In principle, we'll be using Ethereum testnet. So in terms of iShare, you're using the satellite to guarantee legitimate access to information. We might also use Elastria blockchain as an alternative. So this is regarding the Call Me project. Just to introduce that the Call Me experience. So we were one of the 13 experiments selected, but there will be a second opportunity, so that a second open call, and there will be space for 19 bottom-up experiments, which can win this funding of up to 120,000 euros. So the idea is that consortiums apply for this open call with at least 3 SMEs and or slightly bigger companies, and 1 digital innovation hub. By the way, also larger companies which don't fit the slightly bigger company numbers as identified by European Union can participate in experiments. It's the case of Grupo Sousa, which is participating here in our project. They cannot have budget, but they can participate also in the experiments and win experience and knowledge in these new breakthrough technologies. I already said the budget this second call is giving for each consortium. So the idea is that if some consortium has some idea to somehow create a data space and share that in a trustable way, they can have this financial support where they will be not supervised, tutored in terms of refining the proposed use case definition for the experiment. They will have mentoring in terms of legal aspects, operational aspects, technical aspects also of the components, and all the support on I4Trust technologies. So the second call is open until September 12th. So We as I4Trust ambassadors welcome any initiative and are here to also provide more information if needed. So this is all I had to share. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
For today's roundtable, the topic will be around islands mobility and logistics, with the company of Sérgio Matos of Logis Link, Andreia Quintal from Horários do Funchal, Nuno Freitas of Empresa de Cerveja da Madeira, Armando Ribeira of Municipality of Funchal, and to moderate this roundtable, we have Lino Nóbrega, Chairman of the IT of Madeira Chamber of Commerce.
Salute all the participants. I will do now a brief presentation of people here. We have Andrea representing the bus company of Funchal. Because I cannot listen to. We have Armando from the municipal city of Funchal. He has a doctor degree in land regulation. He also has experience in European project management, having coordinating the Civitas Madeira project in 2008 and 2013. And he's actually currently one of the members of administration of the City Hall. We have Nuno Freitas from the beer company in Portugal. He's responsible of management, procurement and information systems. He has coordinated the implementation of SAP system. He coordinated the restructuring project of the distribution of the company, and they increased to national level all the produced brands and increased the fame of the local beer company, beer brand Coral. Finally, we have Sérgio Matos, which is representing the Grupo Sousa. He has a degree in management, and he is an administration member, and his role has to do with navigation and also land logistics. Since 2017, he's administrator of Logis Link, one of the companies in this group. In his activity, he has implemented the track and trace system, the warehouse management system, and also different processes, as well the customer relationship portal. And recently he's participating in this Call Me experience. I would like to thank your presence here. Now let's go to your presentations. For the first presentation, I will invite Dr. Sérgio Matos. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank the invite. I'm representing the groups Sousa. I will speak a little bit about transportation area. First, at macro level, then city context. We today have a unique situation. In the last years, we were coming out of the pandemics. We lived this war. Also, the inflation doesn't have parallel in the last decades. Only in the time of my fathers we had numbers like this. This is making a disruption in logistics. There's a dislocation in production. There's also a surge in different markets. And all of this has led to price instability in markets. Maritime transport has suffered with all these adjustments and the the reduction of our offer. So the renting of ships and maritime transport has increased 1,000%. So to rent a ship, it would cost a few years ago $6,000 per day. Now it's almost $50,000 per day. So a simple container would cost $2,000. Now it's like $18,000. Madeira has been a bit protected from this price escalation because we have the operators having their own ships here, so it's a bit saved here. So, since here, if in a normal situation we would be renting a ship, but we are here to serve the island. So region is supplied twice per week with 3 ships, 2 from the mainland and 1 from Azores. We have connections to and from Europe, from the rest of the world, and Lisbon. We have a transit time around 30 hours between mainland and Madeira. Perishable products that is loaded in Saturday, Tuesday is already in Madeira. We do this with a similar cost of transportation between Lisbon and Bragança from the center of the country to the north. This regularity of transportation, Azores, for example, is only once per week, Madeira twice. And this brings many advantages to the economy. This allows an optimal stock management. So companies don't need stock larger than 30 days. The money that would be used in this stock can be channelized to production. And if you look at this example of regularity in the transportation process, for example, we can see the question of vaccines. Madeira had the vaccines only 1 week of delay regarding Europe, and keep the regularity of this supply. We have in our group also a project of a natural gas pipeline, which doesn't come from Russia. With 50 containers, we can supply regularly natural gas to Madeira, we can reduce the dependency of oil. Right now, the fuel consumption here in Madeira is around 50% oil and 50% other sources. This brings us the question of dependency of oil and sustainable development, and also the necessary requirements of sustainability, environment, people, and company development. Portugal has signed the Paris Agreement with very ambitious goals until 2050. Most multinational companies already defined the carbon neutrality in 2030 and 50. So all these goals must be adopted by all market intervenients, because the ecosystem is not isolated. Today, legislators already forces companies so that in their management reports they have to supply non-financial indicators and show what is the environmental impact. And this has a very strong impact in the way how do we look to cities. Most population lives in urban area, and the number will be increased to 80% in the future. We must think how we will interact in the city, the vehicles, transportation measures, and even the own economic activities. Cities have a supply system more and more complex. The last mile has really a significant impact in the transportation, and this kind of delivery is growing a lot due to e-commerce, and the pandemic has accelerated e-commerce. The growth what was expected in 4 years has happened in 6 months. Also, delivery at home, like clothes, foods, furniture, and also prepared food, everything is delivered to the door. And this creates lots of pressure in the roads, which has to be shared. There's a lot of competition, and looking here at Funchal, between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. all economic operators are going to the same roads, and there's lots of inefficiencies in economical terms and delays. We must create more favorable conditions so we can live in the cities. This theme has been started to be addressed by the European Union in 2010. In the meantime, many years have passed. We are seeing in many cities vehicle restrictions, be it by vehicle kind or by circulation times. We have like 35 heavy vehicles circulating in Funchal. Also the orography, the steepness in the island brings also different restrictions on which vehicles should we use. And we must balance the mass transport and the individual transport. And this will be lead to the way that the transportation will have to change vehicles in the logistics network, so it can be more effectively delivered at home. So we have to have means to collaborate between partners. People have to adhere more and more to technology. Today, most people have a smartphone, and it's like a terminal it's like a small computer that can serve for many things, localization. Today we have deliveries without paper, just phones. If you look like this market entry of Uber services and Glovo, with this technology, everyone has a smartphone. There's a huge growth and new technological standards thanks to these companies. Today, clients don't only want to know when the product comes from first point to last point. He all wants to know all the intermediate stages. And nowadays, with smartphones and smart solutions, we can have all this information. So we must bring companies together so that this works. We have to have simpler processes. Complex processes makes this difficult to integrate. We have to create synergies. Each company has to maintain its identity. But there should be more collaboration between companies so they can protect their data, their client, their market, and maintain its identity. We can search new solutions. Some are already there. Some solutions are there where there are small distribution centers near cities where different kinds of products can conflude. It doesn't make any sense that people in the street that have 20 different suppliers, all these 20 suppliers pass through the street. There shouldn't be 20 vehicles there. We at LojasLink are making some steps here. We have a multi-client logistics a warehouse just inside the limits of the city. So we concentrate there all different merchandise from different companies, but there are many ways to improve. There's also this idea of installing lockers. So the products are put in lockers and people go there and fetch the products. And this experiment in terms of car sharing is also a very useful way to optimize resources and the sharing of cars. Lastly, we should have redundancy because in terms of cybersecurity and data protection, there's this need for openness and collaboration. We need to protect this data. I would like to thank you, Sergio. Now I'd give the word to Andrea. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I will speak a bit about Horários do Funchal, which is our local bus transportation in the city, how we work today. We also have services outside the city. We have also small buses that go around the center of the city. and all these buses in the historical zone have no emissions, and also have the particularity of the city in the mountains. They need to have very good braking systems because the hills are very steep. We also have buses for the service to reduce mobility. Even though buses has wheelchair access, there are still some needs, and this dedicated service has more proximity to people. And also, I'd like to refer to the streets in Funchal. There are many particularities. There are very narrow roads, very curves that are very limited. So each bus has to adapt to different areas. So all this brings complexity to the management of transportation. A few numbers with the service. So pandemics, the numbers were a bit reduced. In 2019 we were good. We have around 50,000 passengers and about 2,000 trips. I will speak a bit of planning operation and 5 aspects that we are working on. And we would like to innovate in the future and make the processes faster, both for the collaborators and also regarding data analysis. So we have all this definition of the bus lines, and according to the demands, also the interaction the clients have with us is important. Many times clients suggest new lines or changing the trips, and we always try to adapt the service to these requests. So whenever there is a request, we need to analyze our resources and see if we can comply to that request. Also, we have to pay attention to our non-clients, the users of individual transport. So we regularly talk with our non-clients to know about why they don't use public transportation, and always try to find solutions. Regarding planning, we also come in the world of data sharing. We need to have data between different entities regarding the roads, know where people reside, and how all this plays. Also about health services, where people work. All this info has to be put in a place, and we have to discover the best transportation solutions for our clients or potentially new clients. We have buses, drivers. We have also different buses to different streets. We have to plan and create the distribution of the drivers. Also, we have problems regarding labor restrictions and law, and they have to define and plan the service according to the rules. And many times we have to redefine everything because of regulation changes. Every day we monitor the service, regarding the trips, the punctuality, and we have to take into account also when some street closes and if there is some problem in the bus or some passenger. So we have a support system to the planning. And here is also a very important data source, because we have the times of the trips, and we can see if some trip is constantly late. Maybe we have to change our service, and we have to really collect well the data so we can analyze it and act. Regarding the ticketing system, we will be hiring a new ticketing system And so everyone today uses a smartphone, so we want to have a solution using the smartphone, so in parallel to the traditional system, which are not so apt to use the new technologies. By defining new technologies, which is connected to the vehicle operation, we need to guarantee that it is easy also for the drivers and the operators. We must take into account the ease in the operation. And the part to inform clients is very important, be it regarding planning, be it during the trip. A tourist needs to know where to come out, and we want to improve the information sharing with the client. And being a touristic region, it's very important that we have information for tourists, and we put information in Google Maps, which most tourists use, so we have more complete information for everyone. We also do lots of communication activities and break the idea that public transportation is not easy or not comfortable. Our general purpose is better mobility for all citizens and make our customers and employees happy. Thank you.
Bom dia a todos, muito obrigado pelo convite que fizeram a apresentação da Madeira.
Thank you everyone for the invitation. So I'd like to start by saying that we are not a logistics company. We produce and sell drinks, but nevertheless we are totally dependent on logistics. How Sergio said, since some years we have its external supply solved, and we have here a problem. Our competitors in the mainland can have a glass truck from a few hours. Here it's different. We are dependent on the ships, but nevertheless we have partners that solve this, and we can focus on our relation with the clients in a more capillary distribution. And this is important to refer. Regarding mobility and innovation, we look at it more in terms of what it allows to do to improve the interaction between us and the clients, how we can know the clients in the different perspectives, and so that we can optimize our relationship with them and have both parties satisfied. Our relationship with the client happens in two moments. In the pre-sale time, our collaborators pass one day, and then in the moment of the technical assistance of the thousands of equipments we have spread all over the island in terms of refrigeration. And also, we cannot talk about mobility and logistics without addressing the sustainability issue, as referred by my colleague. And today, this is a one issue that we cannot ignore, and this sustainability allow us to be in the market in a different way as our clients in the mainland. There's a difficulty here, which is returning the empty bottles. And there's a reverse logistics that normal delivery doesn't happen. So all our bottles, glass bottles, can be returned, which is good for sustainability, but it raises some issues regarding logistics complexity. But it helps when we talk about sustainability and circular economy, as we are an island. Now, regarding details, for a few years, we have a sales system that when our collaborator goes with a client, we can know which other orders they have made, when was the last order, when the client likes to receive products before or after lunch. Also connecting with the customer relationship, which football club the client likes. So all of this happens not online, because communication, although being possible, would make it very difficult, but we have different synchronization mechanisms.
Hoje em dia ainda pode acontecer, como vos disse, a sincronização não é permanente.
So although synchronization is not permanent, we today can solve problems of suddenly not having product stock available. We saved lots of paper and immediate integration with the ERP system we use, which is SAP. Also in distribution, we made similar path. Here, using the global positioning system, we don't use it always, this optimization. In different moments along the time, we review the information, geographical information of our clients, but nevertheless, it's everything equal regarding sales. The big change happened 3 years ago. So when there were lots of invoices and papers and were taken in the distribution, and there's difficulty to know what was given to the system, today we just take the order. If the client suddenly doesn't want some product, using the electronic device, it's automatically updated the order, so the invoice is emitted with the real products delivered, so there's no confusion with credit orders and things like that. And
não originado só pelos inputs deles, mas pelos inputs dos colegas também, tanto do vendedor como de distribuição,
Asking for payments also works well with this system. Using only the mobile device, no need to take lots of paper. You can simply see what outstanding invoices there is, and they can say, oh, I want to pay this and that. Or the invoice can be sent by email if the client has that desire. And our most recent project is called GESCOL. This is a temporary name.
Permite aqui a manutenção de todos estes equipamentos, não só a manutenção
The idea is to
de prevenção, de higienização e limpeza dos diferentes equipamentos, como de reparação não preventiva, portanto, quando somos chamados para alguma coisa.
to allow the management of all the resources, preventive maintenance, and also control all our goods that are spread all over the island. In terms of Comodat contracts. So when some cleaning operator arrives to the bar and see that the beer is not tasting good, they can see if there's this usual problem of the beer is bitter. So it will help the management of all these solutions and problems. Thank you for your attention. Good morning. I'd like to thank the invitation of Asif in the form of Marco Vieira. I'd like to salute the panel, the people present here, and the ones that are online. So in urban centers, the logistics is a very important aspect. Many times, loading and unloading of goods is done in places outside where they should, but many times these places have cars that should not be there. So to solve this problem, cities have implemented devices with curbside assets so that we can solve this problem of loading and unloading and traffic in general. And this is a very important support to urban planning and mobility management. Recognizing the importance of technology, the municipality of Funchal, together with other entities, we participated in the Civitas destination project. We disallowed to put 179 LoRaWAN devices to determine if the parking places are busy or not. This is spread on paid parking, non-paid parking, and also loading and unloading spots. This is the places in the city where we have these sensors.
uma percepção das nossas taxas de ocupação
This allows us to have a perception
muito alta.
of the percentage of occupation which I can advance are very high.
São alguns dados que conseguem recolher alguns
This is a few data and graphics that came out directly
do sistema
of the system,
e que depois de
and then
trabalharmos primeiro
after being worked,
apoiar
we can
decisão.
take conclusions and take decisions.
Posteriormente, a Câmara está a participar num projeto que se chama FlexCap,
We are also working in project called FlexCurb,
que tende tornar a utilização do estacionamento
which aims to make
mais eficiente,
parking more efficient,
associado
especially associated to loading and unloading operations.
à do congestionamento.
This will reduce to the traffic congestion and evaluate with more detail the
Apoiar a fiscalização,
problems regarding loading and unloading, support fiscalization,
situações que descrevi no início de
and solve these problems of abuse of loading and unloading places. The final goal is to support the municipality and the citizen
no alcançar os objetivos
to achieve the purposes
muito maior
so that we have
fenómenos de congestionamento.
more less and less traffic congestion problems.
Este projeto FlexCard tem como output
This FlexCup project has as output basically two tools,
digitais. Uma delas
two digital tools.
que é destinada aos
Uma é
afetos às operações
a aplicação do condutor,
verificar a localização e o estado
the driver application, so that the drivers doing loading and unloading can
e a possibilidade
know
de reserva
in real time what is the availability of loading and unloading places. They can, in a dynamic way, reserve the spots and also have route management. And also we have a dashboard which allows the support on how to decide where to create new parking spots, also managing the policies of using these spots, and also providing alerts to the public.
os parceiros
These are the partners
do projeto.
of this FlexCurb project. We have 4 cities, Funchal, Toulouse, Leuven and Strasbourg. We have the support of special technological companies and specialists in communications. I'd like to end bringing emphasis to the fact that the more innovative the technologies are, the success always depends on the collaboration between the entities, of their exception between collaborators, and also of the effectiveness of fiscalization. Because when you have projects that interfere with mobility patterns, it's essential to have a communication strategy that can make people more aware, and both the retailers and the population for the benefits of these tools, and that the regulations can be respected. In the case of FlexCurb, the support of the logistics field will be central so that this project has success. This will be our bigger challenge. Thank you. Thank you very much to all for the excellent presentations that took most of my work. And since we have a few time, I would like to ask your future vision regarding what is the future of public transportation and the main challenges in the next years in your activity. I can as it was mentioned yesterday, long term is unpredictable. Medium term, what I can say, we are developing projects to make process more agile and how we can better satisfy the clients. We must adapt. This 8 to 6 time has been changed regarding work. We have to analyze data and comply with the requirements of clients. We also want to renew vehicles, have more sustainable vehicles. And also we must take into account the bus entry, because we have more and more aging people. And everything according to the necessity of the clients. Also, we need to take into account the roads and the traffic. This is essential for the access.
Mas diga-me uma coisa. Dos problemas que resolvia a vida de todos nós, nomeadamente as regiões de Armando, era o facto de termos muito mais pessoas a usar o transporte.
One of the problems we have is that we could have much more people using the public transportation. What is your company doing so that more people can use public transportation and less cars? We have trying to inform clients. With the Civitas project, we have many communication activities. We have school activities in schools with our partners. And we are trying to show that how much is easy the public transportation. Of course, if we don't have many people using the public transportation, we cannot have to increase the frequency of service. We need to gather more clients. So we have the chicken of egg problem. We need more buses and more lines to have more clients, but on the other hand, we need more clients to have resources for that. I would like to ask now to Armando, what do you see how Funchal could be in the future for smart city? It can be a very good incubator as a small city. What do you think could happen in the next 50 years? First, we have to solve the war problem. But, okay, no. These new technologies will allow us to make much more sustainable decisions. One thing is to take decisions with according how we feel, another is to take decisions based on real data that help us decide. So we need to have a more disciplined city and citizen. There's a more environmental awareness. And I hope that we have more and more electrical vehicles and also more competitive buses in regards to individual transportation. The city has to be more transport friendly. With the new challenges we will have soon, with the number of cars visiting the city, and the improvement of the access to the city, we have to have better planning. Also, we need a better management of parking, a more integrated management of the parking. What about decentralizing Funchal? We are more concentrated. How Funchal will grow to where? So, main problem here we cannot decide where people will live or where they will drive. Today we see today we see that many people live in Caniço and work in Funchal. And when we build, we must think about the city as a whole. What do you think will happen in the next years in this area of reverse logistics? Is a horizontal question to other areas. What we see today is an increasing segmentation of clients. We have lots of customization nowadays, almost a different product for different clients, and also the alcohol-free products. So we have the challenge in the global world and regarding circularity. This situation in terms of logistics brings impact to our relationship with the citizens. We are looking what the automotive industry allows us to do at the moment. We don't trust yet the heavy distribution electrical vehicles. It's a step we could take, but we don't feel trust at the moment. We end up trying not reducing our environmental impact, but through our industry impact, try to reduce. We are installing solar panels. We are changing the steamer from fuel to biofuel. Many of our systems are fed by our solar panels. In terms of logistics, without taking the word of whoever knows, really goes a lot through local mobility and improving communication. Have you thought about outsourcing logistics? Some of it we are outsourcing. Some suppliers work with us in this field, but we feel we lose a bit of the knowledge of the client, which is important to us. But the world is fast, and we can never know what happens. Sergio Matos. The future challenges as a logistics operator. Taking into account they have more robots, Uber. What can be different in the future in your business? This is a difficult question. Any investment in logistics has to have a minimum horizon of 10 years. And if we try to understand in 10 years how we can circulate in Funchal, what will be the energy for that? If you look a little bit before to maritime transport, it's a 30-year investment. Each decision now will go up to 2050, and we don't know exactly what will be the fuel for the naval industry in 30 years. There are some rehearsals, but we, as a small operator, we need to know this planning, where everything is going. Aqui we always sit the same scale problem. All these technological means this implies space. There's very few space for logistics. We want to rent warehouses where they don't exist. Either we have some lever support that compensates the scale, we work with different multinationals in Madeira, but they work in different European countries, but the problems are different because the scale is different. There's different economic rationality of our operations. And talking about maximization, our highest competitors are our own clients. Our business is very squeezed. If I put a lower price, the client can do it in-house, and it's very challenging. I'd like to take the interventions it would be good to have more time to discuss other teams. I don't know if somebody in the audience would like to make some question to the panel participants. If there are no questions, we finish this panel. Thank you so much.
Welcome back. The first keynote of this morning is about the value and use of a trust framework for business-to-business data sharing. It's with Gerard van der Hoeven, I believe, from the iShare Foundation. I do believe that he's listening. Gerard van der Hoeven.
That's me.
Yes, it is you. Thank you.
I didn't even hear that. It was sort of expected, of course, but thank you very much, and good to be here. Nice to see so many new faces. So I look forward to get to know all of you a bit better during today. So I'm from the Netherlands. I just got here, flying in from Amsterdam. So it's cool to be in Madeira and share what we're doing with iShare and the iShare Foundation. Also in close collaboration with FIWARE, so we'll be pointing that out in a bit. But the key thing that I wanted to talk with you about today is the role of trust in data sharing, in data spaces, and especially trust between businesses. And trust is, of course, super important in everything. So this is where I started this morning, trusting my car. Actually, super accurate. I recorded it this morning, without touching my steering, without touching my car at all, just recording what the car is doing, taking me to the airport. Me trusting my entire life with Tesla, actually. So how does that work? Because, clearly I trusted that machine, I trusted that car to bring me safely on the location, actually stopping for traffic light, what you see it's doing, taking the corners, taking exits, and it's actually happening. This specific part, is it restarting? Right, I think I take over at some point. But usually, of course, we learn from others, and we learn from others what can be trusted, and we learn ourselves what can be trusted, and to what extent technology can be actually trusted. Usually, we're not doing that independently, totally on our own, but we try to build on the shoulders of others. But with the whole data sharing process in a lot of businesses, we're sort of trying all over again and starting all over again. Setting up new contracts, super worried about what's happening with our data. We've seen everything happening with Cambridge Analytica and all the other examples where your data is actually utilized for something totally different than your own purposes. So that is, of course, the reason to really secure data and be worried about that. But is that scalable? Is that really the way to go for the long run? Because what you end up with in the whole business-to-business data sharing process is a lot of contracts, which is maybe not ideal and maybe funding a lot of lawyers that would definitely love that. But as a business, you want to be able to be versatile, be working with other businesses in the same segment, in the same industry, in a super fluent way. So not having all those clauses, figure everything out all the time again. So wouldn't it be great if you can connect to something else, can connect to something like a trust anchor that is giving you the certainty that you can actually work with parties, that stuff is covered, that there's a legal coverage, that there's a technical coverage of that trust. And with that trust part, actually control who accesses your data, what they are going to do and can be doing with your data and your information, and really be in full control, digitally verifiable, and grip of what's happening and traceability of how that data is actually used. So that's where iShare started. We started back in 2015 as a sort of a research phase project in logistics. So good to be here and also heard some other research and the other projects in logistics were also happening. And the starting point was, hey, we're going to share data, which is all super cool, and we're going to put it on a central platform. So basically all logistics companies said that is amazing, but not with my data. Because how can I know what's happening with that information? So that triggered the development of iShare as a trust framework, where data is not stored centrally, it stays at the location, but that data is controlled by you as an organization. So that is where the iShare Trust Framework was born and started originally, with a few key principles. So iShare Framework does not define anything of your data. So we're not defining what kind of data is shared. You just build on the trust framework and you agree with parties what kind of data is actually used. There's nothing centralized. So iShare Framework is fully distributed. It's federated, if that makes any sense to you guys. You know what federated is? Not a lot? Only one. Okay? So maybe it's good to... So the principle of federation is roughly the same thing as the government. The government also is partially federated. There is some form of control in terms of trust, and these are the guidelines, and this is how we work. But the actual operation is done locally by, in iShare's case, by data spaces. Data spaces can have full freedom of how to design and use iShare components and the iShare framework in onboarding their participants. Along the same lines of trust, because that will be used across the data spaces. And a key principle is that iShare is non-profit. So it's not a commercial offering. We really serve all the data spaces that work with iShare and build that. And with that, we really bring trust. We bring pure data sovereignty. That's also one of those hype terms, but do you guys have a picture what data sovereignty is? No. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 1. So let's make that simple. Because sovereignty is nothing else than full control and control of what's happening with your data. Just as a country is sovereign as long as it has full self-decision power on what's happening with the country. Now, look at Russia and Ukraine. They're trying to harm the sovereignty of Ukraine, clearly. That same happens with data. Your data is usually stored already at service providers. You use cloud applications, you use a lot of applications already. What's happening with that data? If you look at the European Data Governance Act, that is about data sovereignty for businesses. That is what we basically allow you as a business to control what's happening with your data that is already in existing applications. And we've been building the trust framework for quite a period. We've been live since 2018. Currently have data sets of 1.5 million businesses already opened up and basically shareable within the iShare network. And I'll jump into a bit more details how that works, because there's nothing in terms of data in the network, of course. We only enable parties to share data. Data stays at the source. Key thing is that it's nowadays trusted by governments. So the Dutch government in 2 areas went all the way to start using iShare as a way to request access to data of businesses. That same logic can of course be applied everywhere. Growing pretty quickly. I think the numbers make you guys can read, so it's clear where we're headed. Expect to be at close to 200,000 organizations registered in the iShare network in the coming year, especially for one of the most scaling use cases, and I'll show that in a bit. So good to share what is it really? What's iShare and what are the core elements, and try to make that simple. So the cornerstone foundation is non-technical. It's the legal baseline, it's the terms of use of data. Because that is for every business the stack of contracts that we just saw. But then going in a different way. You don't need a bilateral agreement with an organization to share information. you have a generic umbrella where every data transaction is falling under that same umbrella in the terms of use. And with that terms of use, you cover, hey, I share data, my data with you, and I'll provide you with a license, and that license is a contractual agreement. But that license is dynamic. So you can give data to a government, stating you can use it, but you can't resell it. Or you can use it, and you can create generic reports out of that. Well, and much more, and it's a dynamic process, so those licenses will be scaling. So if you check out the iShare site, those licenses are defined. And it's pretty, well, a key item in how you work with data access. With that, well, building the cornerstone of everything basically, because all those organizations are onboarded on that same terms of use, but without limiting data spaces to go specific. Because for a specific data space, a specific applications, you can have additional terms, which is all fine. You can also register and create specific terms of use in the iShare network. Then the next component. It's based on the distributed ledger. So every data space has his own ledger, his own node where he can onboard your own participants, which is done on the same level of assurance, so the same trust level is set up. That's that federated structure that I just mentioned is set up in the same way for all those satellites. So basically satellites are organizations that are certified to onboard new organizations. And of course that is not a manual process, because there's just APIs with documentation to do digitally onboarding of especially data owners. And that's what we're doing in a few of the cases now, where data owners are onboarded just by using eIDAS with the right trust level, log in with eIDAS and with that register your organization, agree with the terms of use, and with that be available for data sharing in the entire network. And with that ledger, well, there's digitally verifiability of your contracts, your credibility, your certificates, all the elements that are required for the whole data sharing structure. So that's the participant register, and where there's also a bit of discovery, because in that ledger we can also find, and you share as an organization, where your data offering is, so where your services are that you provide. Because we bumped into that issue, that new cases started, hey, I want to share where my data actually is, and now I have to share that bilaterally. Now you have a pointer in the network where to start searching for the data of that organization. And secondly, it's the pointer to where authorizations are stored. So maybe you now completely lost it, what that construct is and how authorizations and data and how that worked. Anyone's lost here? More or less? Yeah, thanks for being honest. So that's why there's sort of a demo flow in a minute to take you through and show you how it's really working. Last part, and definitely not the least, is building on top of all of that, is an authorization registry structure. Basically, an authorization registry is nothing else than a register where you store what company, what organization can access what data point wherever it is stored. And that sounds like an old-fashioned notary kind of structure, but of course that's not the case. It's fully dynamic, looking at the logistics. Think about, hey, I generate an ECMR. I don't know whether you share something about ECMR. Anyone knows what ECMR is? No, okay. So you have a bill of lading when you send goods. That bill of lading is going to be digitized. And in that bill of lading you have, this transporter is going to do this part and this transporter is going to do that part. So with that digital format you generate authorizations to data wherever it is. So that's the logic of generating authorizations and not have your vulnerable data open to everyone. It's really shared with those you really work with. So, and with that, we're working in Dutch logistics where we originally started. But the great thing is that that ledger is cross-cutting. So it's not specific to a sector. There's nothing specific to a sector. And that's where we're now building in the Belgian logistics, in the building sector, in housing sector, in the energy sector. cross-cutting all those sectors, because those organizations are the same. Every organization, whatever business, they all work in logistics as a part, because you get stuff in and you're sending stuff out, but you're also in the energy data space in a sense, because you buy energy and you produce energy with solar panels, well, and so forth. So the concept is that with that registration, you must be able to contribute and work in different data spaces, but with a central trust anchor. And that's why we set this ledger up in this structure. So, well, you had a presentation from Colmy earlier. We saw that it's a challenge for a lot of organizations to get your head around, okay, how to actually apply this. So that's why we, together with FIWARE, started I4Trust. And I4Trust has basically a data space acceleration program with funding for those projects that want to think data space, want to set it up, and not talk about it, just do it. And that's what, bless you, that's what we're, well, in the Netherlands we're trying to be direct, as I just heard, which is usually the case indeed, but we're really trying to be pragmatic as well. Test it and learn from that and develop on. And that's what we're doing with the I4Trust program. I have a few slides on, I thought I had that. I thought I had the terms, but you've learned a lot about I4Trust already, but I'll get back to I4Trust in a bit. But the thinking was, let's create a program not only consisting of the trust components, but also of the actual building blocks to build that data space and build the other aspects of a data space. So I won't take you through the entire model, but the thinking is, and I'll share the slides later on, that you have different building blocks that create a data space, which is basically a set of agreements. We're going to work with this data standard, we're going to use this trust framework, this is how we're going to govern this data exchange, these are the services that we're actually going to use. But instead of starting all over again and starting from scratch, there's so much available there already. So, of course, well, I've shared what we do with iShare and where we are in terms of specifying the level of trust in identities, that trusted exchange, and that authorization registry, that access and usage control that I showed, and a part of that discovery and the governance. But if you bring FIWARE in, there's a lot of open source components already that complete that package. And that's why it's such a strong combination, and we're really driving data spaces with a real set. So FIWARE team implemented iShare interfaces and specifications in some of the components. We now brought that together and have a ready package to actually get started in reality, which to my mind is extremely useful and valuable for a lot of organizations. So, also being cautious of time, let's move forward a bit on what it actually is, that whole data sharing and how that works, and I'm trying to take you through a few examples. So there are a few core roles, and EIDAS just jumped out of my scheme apparently. A few core roles. So of course there's the data consumer, an organization, a legal entity that needs to have access to information and needs to have information to provide a service or to do something smarter for a data owner. That data is usually stored at an application that is out there already, like in logistics support community system or your energy provider, or well, you name it, there are a lot of applications out there already. But the data is from a data owner because it's his building, he owns that building, he owns the solar panels, he owns the truck, or he owns the goods. So he should be in control of that information. And to be able to let data consumer and data provider work together, there are a few aspects required. Well, first of all, that trust anchor, where to keep track of what roles parties have and if they can actually work together. But that need to be filled with identities with organizations that you can trust, based on EIDAS, the EIDAS framework, which is the European standard for business identities, which is now being rolled out in version 2. And maybe good to jump into that later on, but let's stick to that is a trusted framework. But we're not limited to that. So iShare standard specifies this is the level of trust we require, and basically eIDAS completely complies with that, and we connected the two frameworks. But for the US, there's no eIDAS. So for the US, we will have other identifiers, same for Asia. And we're not linked or locked into that. We're open for global use of identities. And then last but not least, that authorization registry, which is not a centralized role. It's just a service provider. There can be any service provider. Or, well, you could actually do it yourself with all the open source components that are available, both from iShare, but also in iForTrust, and basically the FiWARE marketplace is generating that authorizations. So, now we have a federated structure where we have agreements on how to communicate, that data standard is defined, but what are we going to do with that? So there I thought, let's take a few examples. Something changed with my animations, but one example is climate agreement reporting. So all countries in Europe and much more signed for the climate agreement with the objective to, of course, bring CO2 emissions down. But all businesses and all governments are working on measures to actually make that go down. In the Dutch structure, the Ministry of Economic Affairs is responsible for that, but instead of asking all businesses to report with a written report in Excel uploaded somewhere and have an entire team processing all that data, they flipped it around. They thought, why not get authorization on the energy consumption of that business directly from the energy supplier? Then all those business owners just give us authorization to that existing data set without all the hassle and all the reporting that you should do afterwards. Well, same sort of line of thinking is happening in logistics, where that data is already somewhere, for instance in terminals, in ports, in transportation locations. That data is already there. So instead of downloading it and sending it to your client, why not authorize your client to retrieve that data directly? Same goes with the whole food value chain that we've been seeing in iForTrust as well, to have visibility of a longer value chain of what's happening with food. So I wanted to take you through in a few steps what that climate agreement structure looks like and how it really works, and then getting a bit to conclusions. So it's the same principle, using existing components. That's what they did, nothing else. So it could actually be an iForTrust example. So using iShare components, a standard data specification, and not too complicated, super small. It's basically 5 or 6 fields, and that's it. A simple data service that you can use everywhere. And then what is the structure? It's pretty straightforward. The data consumer, which is the Dutch government, checks in the network if that data owner is already registered. If that's not the case, he gets a message, do you want to register? As soon as he's registered, within the satellite, the pointers are available to the data set. The data set is a service provider that is already available within the network. The government checks with that service provider, I want to have the data set of that specific data owner. Can you give me that? But the first step, of course, then is, hey, is that organization actually trusted? The one that is asking, oh, check, the government is actually trusted. That's a good thing. Is that data owner actually in the network? Oh, they're also in the network, that's also good. Okay, so where are the authorizations of that specific data owner? Because it's his decisions where to store those authorizations. With that information, which is just a pointer, the check will be done. The government wants to access your data set at this energy provider. With these terms, do you want to give him the authorization to actually do that? If there's no authorization yet, that is the moment that there's a message out to the data owner. It's just an email today. Hey, government wants to access your data. Do you want to give them authorization to access your existing data set? With that, okay, authorization is set. Data owner is in control. He can change and withdraw that authorization at any given moment. But there's full trust because it's legally covered. It's technically assured. The key exchange is actually done. I don't know how many techies are on board. Technical. Yeah, and then don't jump into the full tech details, but we can do that at another moment. But the key exchange is organized, and with that you have legal security, technical security, and absolute certainty and full control of what's happening with your data. And that's what we're doing with the iShare framework, and we couldn't do that, of course, if there's no other components. We're just a portion in that. So what are the key success factors of getting to a successful project? Also trying to trigger you in terms of what's happening with iForTrust. How do I find a good project? So what I've been doing with the existing projects is start with existing data sets. There's so much data out there already, and there's a lot of confidential business data stored but not used. There's so much, well, I always call it data waste, and that's what we're trying to solve. If you start with that, with a launching data customer, there's just a great opportunity to already start with that. Start simple, that's the other lesson. Well, we've been discussing on our way here. There's so many examples where use cases start crazily complicated and never get off the ground. In that energy case, it's just a simple API that is providing the same data set, and that same API with like 5-6 fields is implemented by a few players, and with that you have a federated structure. Well, built on the iShare framework, of course, I'm of course obliged to say that, but I've seen a lot of cases where projects started from great ideas and a lot of engineering and great structures and a lot of programming, and then there's an interlock because no organization wants to share their data actually. They wanted to learn from the project but never share their data in reality. And that's where starting from that trust element and build on top of that is just helping to get your project really off the ground and not get stuck in engineering. And don't reinvent the wheel, utilize what's there in iForTrust. We brought everything together for you guys to use, and there's even funding for that. So with that, jump into iForTrust. With the program, we're trying to take you by the hand, help you, and you've shared this already. So there's a mentoring program, there's support on all the aspects of setting up data spaces and building those applications, and there's funding. You see the numbers. So that is really helping to get scaling. I'm moving fast on this because it's already shared. So it's specifically targeted at SMEs according to the European specification. So please check that if you are interested. And it's roughly those numbers. I'll share the slides later on. And the process is pretty straightforward. Check ifortrust.org and off you go. And if you can't figure it out, just reach out to me or any of the team. So that's what I wanted to share on trust and structures and how to do all of that. Everything on iShare is just online. It's open source, and we're there to support and help you. And I think the key message here is let's drive this. Sorry, I'll go back. Let's drive this development together. I think in Europe, what guys know Gaia X? Nobody? Few? No, there's initiatives like Gaia X. There's initiatives like IPSAE. There's a lot of initiatives going on there. There's a lot of funding also from the European Commission side to drive this whole data spaces thinking. Because, and that's sort of also the cornerstone, there's been too many platform players overplaying their hands and taking a much too dominant role in sectors. That's why the Commission is driving all this development to enable organizations to work together in a simpler way and not get only massive standards like GSM, which is not simple, but also smaller standards. So as mini standards, how to request an ETA of a piece of luggage, or how to request an energy data set. And that's the development we're on. And well, the call to all of you is let's collaborate and use what is there already and drive new business opportunities. Because in my mind, if you look at the data that's available already now in that energy case and some of the other cases that we've been doing, you can run AI applications on top of that data set and provide added value to so many organizations without having that whole legal barrier, that technical barrier, because the data set is available. The only thing the AI should do is request that data set and give clear value back to the data owners. So it's driving a lot of new opportunities for new line of thinking of entrepreneurs. So with that, I wanted to close, and I don't think well, I usually get that at the end of a presentation, what's your role at iShare? So I don't know whether you said that? Did you say that? No, so I'm the executive director of the entire foundation. So that's, you saw my colleague Rajiv, and with Rajiv and the entire team, we're really trying to drive federated thinking and data sharing in a trusted way. So look forward to collaborate, and open for questions. And I think I lost track of time a bit, but no, it's 32. Still have another talent in that.
I have a question regarding, I don't know if I have to use.
Yeah, go ahead. It's
So regarding, because data, especially in private markets, are connected to revenues and competition. So, and sometimes, because as I understood, so your foundation defined this trust umbrella and this legal framework and support to give credibility and to assurance that your data are well used. But sometimes small companies are not completely aware of the consequences of share some data instead of in others, and especially look at the competitors, because I will share what the other will share. So it's like the prisoner games, no? Here, I believe in data share. So I will do what the other will do, or I will not be the first to share this data. So how you manage this? This is my first question. And the other question, because what you are doing seems really a public service. So I don't understand really, because you fill this gap. Because what you do seems like a public body should do this, no? To give trust, because I trust public body. I don't trust foundation, but I trust you, but...
Thanks a lot. Good starting point.
Sorry.
For discussions today, but
two questions, but very good presentation, and thank you very much, because you opened my mind to something that was completely unknown. So thank you very much.
yeah. Well, thanks for that. Let's take the two questions. First of all, that prisoner aspect, so how to start with it. It's a totally valid point. But the key line of thinking and the actual realization is that data access is actually under your control. So with that, it's not going to any of your competitors. Of course, we started in logistics, which is hyper competitive. And one of the worries was, so if I use this framework, can everybody see who I work with? No, you can't, and no, it's not registered, because it's not visible to any of the nodes. There's no new central platform. So that is a design criterion if you look at the documentation, that is a key thing that is solved. But then still the question is how to start with the first data offering, because if you have the first data offering, it's a network effect. So, well, I've been an entrepreneur almost all my life, and building software companies and thinking about network effects. So that's been my key issue and worry on how do I scale this to a larger level. There's no need to put that on the screen. So the key thing is start with a massive data consumer like the government that wants to have a data set, and there's a clear but simple operational efficiency effect for all those organizations. Those 1.5 million organizations where the data set is available, they have a choice. Am I going to download my energy consumption every week from my energy provider, log in, have someone do that, create a CSV in the format of the government? Or do I give them access to my data set, knowing that they have only the ability to do that, to use it, as long as it's private? Okay. Then it's covered. And all the other cases, so we have the Central Bureau of Statistics in the Netherlands, where basically the same case goes. I don't know how many of you get letters from statistical bureaus. It drives me crazy, because in my mind, that data is available. I want to share it with you, just check it out yourself. My bookkeeping, come on, why should I be? So I have my staff to do that, but this, to my mind, that's silly because the data is all there. So it starts with relatively low threshold and low impact data sets. And then we're scaling, and then we're getting used to it. But then to the second question, should it be a public trust framework? It's a public-private trust framework, and basically the governments, and it's not one government, and all the participants, so all the data spaces that use iShare, influence and are on basically the board of the foundation. So we have all the participants in the council of participants, and they select who is on the supervisory board. The supervisory board appoints the executive board. So there's a great and simple structure to govern this foundation and keep it open and keep it also in check with the objectives of the foundation. And since it's a foundation, but we have that. What's happening? There you go. I just let go of that one. So that's the way to structure it. And the reason it's not fully public is because there is an actual trust issue of a lot of businesses to the government. So that's why it's in between businesses and governments. And indeed, the government side is important. So that's why I've put those two under. So iShare, that's a happy bell. So iShare has been funded by the top sector logistics, which is a part of the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water in the Netherlands, right from the beginning. And the governments are really, incentivized to get this going, but also discovered this is not happening if we do that as the government, because nobody will, in the end, trust unless there's a public governance structure. And the second, funding part, other than the data spaces, because iShare basically gets funded from the data spaces directly, is the European Commission, and with the help of the Commission, we've built i4Trust as an acceleration program. Any other good questions like that? Or better, or worse, or discussions?
I have another curiosity.
Yeah, go.
You have thematic groups, so maybe you are divided because you was born as a logistic platform, no?
So it's not a platform, right? So it's a...
Yes, sorry,
no.
excuse me.
Sorry, it's my own...
You're born from logistics.
Yeah.
But do you have, for example, I don't know, urban mobility, other energies, because each field maybe has specific, so I understand that the data is quite common aspect, but there are technicalities related and special conditions related to this specific market. I don't know if you have something like this.
Yeah, so the line of thinking is that spaces are combinations of organizations in a specific sector that have the same sort of data set that they want to exchange. So we have a data space, and we now call it a data space, or originally it was just a team or whatever, but and they define within that segment, this is the data set we're going to exchange. And these are the terms and conditions on top of the generic iShare terms and conditions that we want to add. And they are totally free to do that. That's the federated principle. They just use iShare as a standard to authorize, use all the components to give authorization and to register participants. So we don't, and my objective is not to build a massive foundation, because that's pointless, just adding cost. There's no point in doing that. All those data spaces have their input also on the general ledger part. So we have a set of fields available for everyone. Bless you. Allergic to long stories? No, so there's freedom. So there's the freedom to structure it in your own data space. Also add extra fields to your own part of the ledger. But if you want to add elements to the generic distributed ledger, you go through the council participants and add those functionalities. So that's sort of the living structure. And as well, we discussed that as well. I'm from Rotterdam, and we always say that is hard to translate. Niet lullen maar poetsen. Nobody gets that. So the point is, don't just talk about it, get going and try it, and that's how you learn. So one of the things we've learned over the last year as well is that we have a single identifier in the iShare network at the moment, which is EORI, the European Economic Operator Identification, which is just amazing, but is not really working in the US or in China or in. So we're now in the process of adding functionality to the ledger to have multiple identification numbers, to also have a US number. And because it's the same with data spaces, an organization also works, well, in Europe, but probably also in the US or in Asia, or so you also want to be found by your US counterparts. Yeah. To enable all those elements, the trust anchor is going to be sort of the single starting point, and from that trust anchor you find, well, what data space is that guy in, and then you find the definition of that data space and find what kind of standards they're using. And so that's the line of thinking. So act local in a sense, but think global in how we set up the ledger. And I think with that, so that's why I mentioned in the beginning, we're in close collaboration with the Gaia team, with IDS team, with the other standard frameworks. And what we have is not a theory, it's just real life. So
I have a final question regarding, because you presented the second call of the, you presented the second call, already David presented. I have a question regarding the consortia, because the consortia you asked 3 SMEs and 1 digital
innovation hub, yeah.
But why you don't include in such consortia public administration that sometimes are, and we explain and we told, sometimes are they stimulate this sharing, data sharing.
Apparently there are 2 microphones you need to talk in. You can have a totally other story in that one.
I was using your
So the point of that specification is that the funding goes to SMEs. But there's nothing limiting you to pull in public administrations, pull in massive corporations, because they can all be part of the project, but it's how they call it in Europe, it's an instrument built for SMEs, because it's trying to, well, solve market failure in a sense.
Right.
So that market failure is usually not happening with the big corporates, but because...
So public administration can join, but will be not funded.
Exactly. There's no money flowing to them, but having public administrations as a data consumer, but having them as a data consumer, and usually this is really a challenge. So I would really love to trigger that line of thinking that we've shown on the climate agreement, because this same situation is in every single country. And with that, you build an open ecosystem and framework, a data space for new energy applications that we all dreamt about. Okay, I have a background in smart metering, been building on that stuff forever, but only now you can start giving access to data in a smart way. Instead of being worried, hey, you guys are going to hack my meter and you're going to drill holes in, etc. Yeah. Did I lose all of you?
Thank you, Gerard. I'm still laughing about the sneeze from our colleague. So let's move on with the next keynote. It's Alberto Abeia from FIWARE Foundation. He brings us his topic about Smart Data Models Initiative.
There's a few. Wait a second.
Okay, we are looking for... Oh, just 1 moment.
The handover couldn't be better, right, Alberto?
Hello. Do you hear me now? Yes. This is not my slides.
Yeah,
not
sorry.
yet.
Sorry. Technical issue.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
No, this is not mine. Oh my God. Usually PowerPoint failing. I have never seen that. It's the first time in my life.
There's always the first.
No, this is not mine. Okay, wait.
It's going to start soon.
No, this is the end. This is the end. Oh my God, there is some dumps. Okay. Yeah, here where? Here. Yes, exactly. Okay. Yeah. Let me do just one quick test. That is working. Yes, it's working. Okay. So thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here. Okay. And now I'm going to comment to you something that, from my point of view, is rather simple. You see here, data modeling expert. The more that I do, the less I trust that I'm a modeling expert. Really. Because, why is that? Because we are learning every day. And what I'm going to explain today is something that, from my point of view, is a really market flow. So, and the market flow regards to standardization. Why? If we are going to share data, and the previous presentation is very good at that, we have to agree on what we are going to share. But how many of you are using standards for their data? So, simple. How many of you belong to a company? Work, or you are the owner? Okay, quite a few. And possibly you are sharing data with the government, with your customers, with clients, with your suppliers, and you are using a format that you have defined by yourself, possibly. Or sometimes you are forced to do something. Okay, this is what I'm going to. Let me recap what's happening in the market. In the market, there are situations in which there is no, let's say, a dominant standard, and I call it the jungle. So everybody is doing whatever they want. And this is possibly the most common situation. And these standards or these formats are incompatible. So especially if you're, I'm a bit researcher on data in Spain, and when you're trying to download the budget of the different municipalities, the structure is always different. So there is quite an imagination. So I'm going to structure the budget in a different way. Imagine that you are willing to know what is the budget for renewable energies in the municipalities of a region. That's an impossible question to answer. Impossible. Okay. This is the jungle. Sometimes, for different reasons, there are several dominant agents, okay? Because possibly they are very big players, and they have competing standards. And this standard used to be incompatible as well. The good situation could be when there is a main player. A main player, you are in logistics, GTFS, you know, the standard for transport, okay? GTFS is somehow a de facto standard. We have the good situation. It was originally created by Google. But Google, fortunately, in this case, releases an open license. And therefore, we can use, everybody can use it without no cost. Okay, but not sometimes, an example, in the health sector, there is another standard called HL7, which is proprietary. So if you have to use it, or you have to implement something, you have to pay. And this is the adopted standard. And then we have the public administration. You will see that I'm not very fond of public administrations, not for any reason, because they do their best, and their best is not that good. So there are many public regulations. You know, an example, so Spain is a quite decentralized country, and every region is creating a regulation. This regulation is not taking into account the others, okay? And so somehow this is public regulation, but this is like the competing situation, but with a point. The public administration is telling you, you have to follow the standard, okay? So, okay, this is nice. But what happens in the real market? We are no longer, let's say, in a static markets, but in digital markets. And what's the difference? The differential factor of the digital markets is speed. Speed is much more quicker. So imagine that we are in an emerging market. like robotics, like drone management, like new logistics, okay? I don't know if you are expert at standardization bodies, but if you go to a standardization body, a usual, oh, I need a standard, or several big players of the market, oh, we need a standardization. What happens? It takes years. But the market is there. So there are many companies that 5 years ago were rather small, and now they are large. So they cannot be waiting for the market, for the standardization bodies to create something that we agree on. And this is what is happening. So there is an alternative. So what I want to tell you today is that there is an alternative, which is complementary. And if you go for agile standardization, instead of taking months or years for creating a standard that we can share this data through iShare, an iShare framework, we are doing that in weeks. So why are we capable of doing that in weeks? I'm going to summarize. And of course, you can feed the standardization bodies. Oh, this is what we do. Just create a classical standard. You can do it. Okay? So the standardization is, you do three things. So you have a process, bureaucratic process usually. You reach a consensus. What's the point? To reach that consensus, you waste months, years. And what happens in these months, years? The market goes away. Okay? And then you reach a technical definition. And unfortunately, in most of the cases, this technical definition has not tested in the market. And then you have the standard, go try to use in your use case, and say, oh my God, there are things missing. The agile standardization is the other way around. Okay? In order to enable interoperability, there is at API level, so how to access the data. I'm not going to get into that. But regarding the data, the structure of what we are interchanging between these different entities. So what we need for the digital market is something that can be reached at market speed. So in matter of weeks, days, eventually months, but not longer. Okay? We don't have to reinvent the wheel. If there is something working, please adopt it, okay? As long as it's open. Of course, if we are creating standards and you have to pay and there are limitations on the use, I don't think that we are going to. Of course, everybody needs some kind of customization. This has to be allowed. How is this allowed? Through licensing. And being flexible to new needs. So imagine that we create an agile standardization. Oh, we discovered that there is a new need. New need has to be implemented in the matter of days, weeks. Okay? And of course, it has to be compatible with linked data. How many of you know what's linked data? Okay, not much. I'm not going to get into that. Okay? And what is the Smart Data Models program? So, oh my God, jump. So it's a global initiative, okay? So there are 4 main organizations on the board. One, TM4 is a telco association, possibly the largest association in the world. Open and Agile Smart Cities is an association of cities across the world, mainly in Europe, but also in Asia and other continents. IUDX is the Ministry of Home Affairs of India, which is responsible for the interchange of data between cities. So it's fun to talk with them and to say, oh, we have a pilot program for 30 cities of more than 1 million people. We say, oh, it's a pilot program. Okay, nice. And the FIWARE Foundation. So what we do is to do agile standardization multi-sector. So logistics is there, but few times logistics is purely logistic. When I mean purely logistic, possibly you have to measure the environmental impact. Possibly when you are delivering the goods, you need the weather forecast. Possibly you need also the traffic. So it's no longer capable of doing things just isolated. What we provide is free and open licensed data models. What is that? You can use it for free. You can modify to your needs, and you can share the modifications. Okay? These are the licensing terms. And possibly the most remarkable is that it's based on actual use cases. If you don't have an actual use case, you are not here. Why is that? Because I've explained, the usual classical standardization defines something and tries that the world match this. This is the opposite, the other way around. So we have a use case. This use case is working, and once it's working, we try to make a data model out of it. Okay? Some cases we generalize, but tiny bit, because it's working. So there is no more demonstration that this is good, because it's working in an actual use case. Or could be the migration of an open standard which is already adopted. So this is the point. This is the differential factor. And of course, we do it at market speed. We'll explain how. And once we are not, let's say, just for the, of course, we are the FIWARE Foundation. It's compatible with everything we do. But we have also exports in JSON, JSON-LD, CSV, GeoJSON features, DTDL, and so on. And this afternoon we'll see more things. And you can reach it at smartdatamodels.org. And the documentation that I'm going to explain is at GitHub. GitHub is a site for, let's say, storing files or programs, and it's everything available there with a free license. So what do we have here? We have the specifications. The specifications are the definition of what are the fields and the conceptual definition. So it's absolutely impossible that you read there, but you can say, oh, address, this is the postal address. Somebody's explaining to you what's there. We create this in 6 languages. The English is the, is the original one, and the other are translated automatically, okay? And we are doing this out of one single source of truth, okay? So there is only one file defining what is the data model, which is done in a technical format called JSON schema. In this JSON schema, you say, oh, this attribute is a text, and the definition is this. And this, whenever you change this file, we run a process, and these 6 languages are updated, everything is updated. Nothing is done manually. Why is that? Because we need to be very agile. If we are not doing that, we cannot meet the requirement. What other things are there? So examples. So instead of having just, let's say, just a documentation, what we have are the examples. And the examples are mandatory. So if there is no example, there is no data model. Okay? And these examples are coming from actual use cases. Once we have the examples, we make some exports in some other formats. Okay? And the last one is the, let's say, the schema of the data model. This schema is defining everything that is there. Used to be very flat. And of course, this schema can have, imagine, 20 properties, but you can use the ones that you need. Our only limitation is that if you are using an address and we say that the address is a string, you have to use a string. You cannot put the number. But for this, you can use it or no, up to you. And this schema is capable of validate technically. So we can say with this schema, oh, this data that you are using is compliant with the standard or no. Okay? And of course, we have some additional information. If it's derived from other regulation, we include it. There is a global description. We can set required attributes. We are limiting to the minimum. Why? Because we don't know what's your use case. So who are we as a program to say, you need these 3 attributes. Otherwise, sorry, I'm saying attributes, but attributes and fields of information is quite the same thing. Okay? And I'm going to tell you what's the current status. You will see here that we are dividing the information in domains. Okay? In every domain, energy now is the winner, smart cities and smart sensoring are the next. Cross-sector are those data models which are useful for most of them, like weather is relevant for smart cities, is relevant for environmental, is relevant for smart water, and so on. And there is an unfair thing because in smart sensoring, there are sensors for many things. There are many sensors for health. There are many sensors for industry, manufacturing. There are sensors for environmental things. So possibly we have to add things. So we group these data models into subjects. These subjects are similar or related data models. Imagine there is data model for transportation. There is a subject called transportation. Okay? And what you see there are the last ones that has been into the system. So autonomous mobile robot, so for giving instructions to an autonomous mobile robot. For IT management, information technology, static IP is for managing statistical information. OCF is for Open Connectivity Foundation. This is the classic example of something already existing. The Open Connectivity Foundation is the foundation for sensor makers like Huawei, Cisco, Lenovo, Silex. There is around 55 companies, I guess, across mostly Asia and United States. Or for the description of Digital Innovation Hub, or a manned aerial vehicle, which is a quite pedantic way of saying drones. Okay, we have quite. And what you see there, and there is one interesting, are the ones that there is in the queue. There is closely to 800 data models, and we have another close to 19 on the queue, expecting to refine some details and to get published. GS1, how many of you know what's GS1? GS1 is a very important provider of standard logistics. Initially, it's somehow proprietary, but they are going to give us permission to create a free version. Okay, we are in this process. And for vessel are for maritime transport, so there are many standards coming in. And these are the contribution. This is a collaborative effort. Remember, we are based on examples. We don't do any example. We are just receiving examples from projects, from people who are actually using. So there are 115 active contributors. There is around more than 18,000 terms that you can search for. So imagine that you need to define something. Why do you need to invent anything? You just look for it, and it's available there. It's free license, and it's recommended. So between different data models, we share many attributes. We also document the people who is adopting, those who are willing to share the information, because you don't have to. So you can be a use case, you can submit your data, your example, but if you want to appear, it's up to you. Okay? And now how to participate. There are 3 levels of participation. If you're just a user, or I want to just to look a bit here, you can find things in many different ways. You find the data model by the name, by the subject that it belongs to, the group, or by the definition, or by the data type, whatever. Okay? Or you can imagine, is this data model useful for me? You can create examples. So you can choose the data model. I want the data model for, imagine, traffic management. You click, and you start receiving examples. Random examples, it's true, in several formats. Okay? Or you can subscribe to updates. So I want, whenever there is a new data model regarding smart cities, you subscribe, and then once a week, if there is any new, you receive information. Or, of course, this is quite common, you can raise an issue. You discover something. Why don't you have, for parking, you don't have parking for disabled people, field for disabled people. And then we raise the issue, we share with the authors, say, how is this done? Do you have any example? Yes, please submit, and then we extend the data model. It's quite easy to extend it. Okay? Or this is very recent, we have a service for booking a session. Imagine that you don't know, what's this about data models? You can go to the smartdatamodels.org. In the upper part, you can book a session of 30 minutes of support, and somebody will help you. What do you want? What's your interest? What do you want to do? And you can do it individually. Okay? You can be a contributor. In order to be a contributor, the first question is, do you have a use case? How many of you belong to the academia, to the university? Okay, me as well. What's the point? We are receiving many submissions about, possibly you don't know what's an ontology. I've defined this ontology, which is very good. And then we go back to the question, do you have a use case? Is anybody using it? And they say, do you have a use case? Okay, come when you have a use case. Why is that? Not because we are rejecting ontologies, not at all. On the contrary, because an ontology is quite a structured definition. But what's the point? experience. If you are not using an actual use case, you don't really know what is useful and what is not. I've seen many ontologies that define lots of terms. Then you go to the market and you discover, what are all these attributes for? Nobody's using it. And on the contrary, there are many others missing. Okay? Another thing that we do before accepting anything is there an open regulation? We don't want to invent the wheel. We don't have knowledge. We don't have will to create anything brand new. If there is an open regulation, we say, oh, adopt this regulation. We are not here for creating anything or for creating your use case. And it happens from time to time that there is not exactly this data model because it is easy, but there is something related. And then we assess if we extend the existing data model or do we create a brand new one. We decide, case by case. Okay? Once you have your data model, we give you permissions and there is an incubated repository when you start working. And whenever you do something, we provide you support. You do one weird thing, which is pull request, which is basically a request for a change in a directory, and you have 5 files that you have to include. Basically, the relevant one are the schema, which is defined in your data model, and the example, which is mandatory. The others are basically for customization, of if you want to be credited that you are the contributor, you can appear there, or the adopters, if you want to disseminate that you are using this data model, whatever, okay? And there are some services if you want to become a contributor. We can check that if you are documented well, telling you, oh, you have 10 attributes, but you are missing one. You are not defining what is here. Imagine that you have a data model that is defining a parameter which is X. What's X? Is a coordinate? Is something else? Okay, we force that. There are some others that instead of possibly you don't know anything about your JSON schema. Possibly is the most common situation. But if you have an example, you can put this example in a form and then the data model in JSON schema is returned. So you don't have to learn. And then you are missing only possibly the description of the data model, the definition, and this kind of thing. So you don't have to worry about that. Let's say our approach is the minimal work for contribution, the minimal. And the minimal knowledge about this technology, JSON schema, that's, I don't want to mean boring, but this is not the point. The point is that you have knowledge about what you are talking about. And you have also Slack. We have a channel for Slack if you want to support that, or you can raise an issue, or you can check the validation. Imagine that you have created the draft data model and you have your example. There is a tool in which you put your schema, you put your example, and it's telling you, oh, it's validating, it's correct. So you can submit finally. And of course, you can participate as a board member. So the 4 organizations is not a closed situation. So we are accepting new members, and we have to sign a memorandum of understanding abiding some principles, like releasing with an open license everything that we do. And what kind of contribution do you want to do? In terms of money, resources, dissemination, it depends on the use case, okay? And I guess that this is basically everything, but what I want to summarize is this. We are in a digital market. We have been talking about data spaces. Imagine that you are willing, and you will do, you are willing to share your data. If any of you are sharing the basically same data about logistics with different formats, this will be a mess. This will be a mess, and possibly you are willing to share, but nothing will work. Nothing will work. I'm exaggerating a bit. But this is your format, this is my format. I cannot match this. So what we are doing here is here to help, and help based on experience, on the experience of people who is actually doing things. Okay? And the agile standardization is not, let's say, an alternative to classical standardization. This is already working, but it's something that can meet the needs of the digital markets. Okay? And one very relevant thing, everything is free. So testing, nothing happens. Imagine that you are going to create something, you can just download all the definitions and see, oh, this matches or no. And of course, we're quite responsive. So whenever you send us a message, we tend to answer. And that's all that I wanted to talk today. And now I'm open to your questions if you have any. Thank you.
Any questions? Raise your hands. Just one is enough. Are you shy?
Sure. You have to make me a question. No. What's the most important question that you haven't? Who is paying the party? How this can be paid? So this is paid by collaborating with research projects and with other initiatives. So we as a foundation, we are non-profit, and not only non-profit. As being based in Germany, we cannot provide commercial services. So we don't sell anything, okay? But we can participate in research and development. If you are imagine in a logistics or in this kind of projects, we can be part of it. And if we are part of it, we get some funding, and some of the activities we do is maintaining this. Okay, so this is relevant. So who is paying the bill, and why are you going to last, let's say, for years? So my job is depending on that. So I'm concerned.
I have a question. Yes. You can have different parties agreeing with. It's okay. I can.
For the streaming.
Oh, okay. So you can have.
Yes.
So you can have different parties adopting different, data models and different standards, but how do you deal with the veracity of data, not just the trust of data?
Yeah. You know what's happening? I was expecting tons of problems like this. But when you have a use case, discussions are minimal. So I was expecting, I want this to be done this, I want to do the other way for the same thing. This is not happening. When you have a use case and you demonstrate that it's working, the discussion reduces to a minimum. So why is that? The discussion that we held is, why don't we extend the data model with this? But there are no discussion, in fact. So it's contribution. But this is, in fact, at the very beginning, we designed a procedure for, let's say, for reaching an agreement between we have never used. And we have the procedure, but this is, I don't want to mean ridiculous simple, but you have a use case working, sorry, this is my experience, no discussions. I don't know why. But.
Okay, thank you.
Because it seems that all your job that is super valuable, and you work for people that work with data, must be, I don't know, this is a question, how do you work so because your users or the people that have to use data usually are politicians. I'm speaking about the top of the pyramid and citizen itself. So I see here some enormous gap between this discussion that is the oil in the tube, so then we need this discussion, but I feel enormous gap with the final user of these systems, which are the people that will be, so they will have improved quality of life. How do you imagine to fill this enormous gap? The more I listen, I see this. What are your
Let me comment a couple of things. So, first thing, so we only work with things that are actually working. And at the very beginning, when I joined, I was not expecting this to happen, but if it's working, you have to demonstrate many things. So the user is actually using it. So it's not something that somebody has defined on a desk. It's used and it's implemented and it's working, and you have examples of the payloads. It does not mean that it's not going to evolve. They evolve, They evolve. But we are removing, and whenever there is a new need, so the process for the publication of an update is, imagine that we have the 6 languages, is less than 20 minutes. So we can have every 20 minutes a new version. So I would like to tell you, oh, we have overcome some difficulties, terrible. This is not the case. Sometimes we are in very emerging markets, like in robotics. In robotics, it's not clear what will be, let's say, the main actor, but when you go to the examples, there is a standard, possibly you don't know what it is, it's called OpenCUA. It's been a standard for a while, and what we are doing is just, is this OpenCUA working? Yes. We do kind of a homogenization to be, let's say, in the same structure, but we are not creating brand new things. So we are taking, if these definitions are here and it's adopted, who are we to say something else? Nobody. We are no. So our goal is that we don't know anything about any of the sector, but we ask that the one who is doing needs to know and needs to have something working. And so I would like to say, oh, when this is working, the discussions are flattened, are removed. And I was not expecting this to happen. But this is happening. And the point that we have is that not dying by success, but we have much more reach. So in fact, we go to many congresses, and they told us, oh, I'm using the data models. Did you? I have never heard of you. In fact, we have now, Microsoft is creating a new tool for digital twins. I don't know if you know. They are taking the data models for creating their entities that they are modeling in the digital twins. Fortunately, in this case, they are mentioning us. And there are several other initiatives that are taking the data models. It's good for us, because this is the license. This is what we want to do. So,
how do you make this use case? So do you make some selection of best practice to explain to people how the data can improve their life? So this is my question. So because this is like a geek community, people that want their lives more simple and clear, to have more faster communication between them. How do you reach the people that give you the data? Because there are the data that...
No. We don't have the data. So we have some...
Think about smart city, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Smart city, smart region. We need information from the people. No? So how, and imagine that I want to, you give me or you ask me an authorization to follow my mobile phone, right?
Yeah.
Completely anonymous. But why should I give you? Because I don't see
No. I'm going to answer. First thing, we are not into that. We only define what information should have, but not the information, what structure of the information. Imagine your name, your surname, your telephone number, your start date, or whatever. And in these general cases, we are trusting in, possibly you don't know, schema.org is just a set of identifiers created by Google. When you have a web page, if you are following the directions of schema.org, Google indexes you much better. So that's why it's not only for Google, it's Google, Bing, Yandex, and Yahoo. These 4 companies, so most of the web, are creating schema.org. Whenever it's available, we take schema.org terms. But only when there is somebody using, because schema.org is huge. Imagine, for defining a person, I guess that you have around 100 values. There are people using information, but I guess from one person we have 10, but we don't mean that we want only 10. No. Are you using? Because my impression is that people start defining things and they get hot and who is using this? Why are you working? There's no use case for that. And regarding the question, how is improving the life of others? our goal is that whenever you go to the data space, you need to provide the information how your information is structured. And we will provide some facilities that if you are following one of these, just put a link and you can download all the structure right away. So you don't need to read something, can be automatically done. So this is our goal. But to be honest, we need to cover more things. But I'm not seeing any competitor. I don't know why, possibly. And the other question, somebody, maybe it was you, why you are a private entity. In fact, we have the Ministry of Home Affairs is a public entity, we are a private one, and the other two are non-profits, but private. Why are you doing this? Because we started. Should this be done by a public entity? Could it be done by the European Commission? Maybe, but we are here. And if they are willing to use it, of course, it's open license, use it. So that's our goal, that's our commitment. It will be never change the license. So you will be free to use, free to modify, and free to share the modifications. This is, let's say, this is one of the principles that when you join the initiative has to be applied. Other questions? Yes?
There was another question actually on how governments actually play in this. So maybe it's good to share the Oslo example.
Yeah.
It's just a great example.
Whenever there is an open regulation, if this is adopted, we take it. If it's adopted and there are use cases, we take it. And we, let's say, map it. And the only thing that we do is just to take the definitions and to create, let's say, the documentation in the same format. So you don't have one format for the environmental, another format for the logistics, another for energy. So everything is very, very similar. So, but we are happy. We are happy to adopt this because for us, to be honest, we are lazy people. So the less we do, the better. So if it's already done, it's adopted, put it in the same format, and go away. Yes, there is a question.
Yes, it's one last question. It's from this gentleman on green, and we'll move forward next.
Hello. How do you validate the model? If you validate the model, you have a use case,
yes,
and you use it. It's working, so you assume that it's a good model. How do you validate that it is a good model?
That's an interesting question. By the flavor. No. There is no... Yeah. Why is this case, let's say, valid general by experience? So there is not a single recipe. So when somebody is providing you an example and you see the values, I don't know how to define, but you realize that this is actually working or it is good. Let me give you an example. We have a contribution by farms, and it's telling us, oh, in this data model you have silo 1, silo 2, and silo 3. And we made the question, if you have 4 silos, what will happen? And then, why don't you, instead of 1, 2, 3, silo an array of silos, and have the silos that you need. But this is the kind of thing that we made. It's very, very tiny adaptation, which is discussed with the use case. This is always discussed with the use case. Because otherwise, we are not, let's say, we are not competent to say if in a farm, maybe if they convince us, oh, in a farm can only have 3 silos for all the farms in the world. Okay. But again, I have to tell you, there is no that problems. Regarding, is it good or bad? It's working. sorry to be so, but it is working. Okay, we test that it's actually working because we contact and there are discussions and you can smell quite right away if this is actually a use case or it's just somebody who has done something. But again, people is not contacting us, I want to create a new data model because there is no payment. Maybe you get, you can get listed, but there is not much benefit. You are doing that because you really need to be here in order to share the data. So that's your, let's say, your business interest. And we haven't had, let's say, kind of imagine large companies saying, oh, why don't you adopt my data models? Because, well, remember that we asked that everything will be contributed with an open license. So there are some problems that you can imagine, but reality is we are not having it. Because there is a saying, I'm sorry, I'm going, in theory and practice are the same. In practice, they are not. So I would summarize with this sentence, okay? So thank you very much. I guess that we are reaching the end.
So we move on with the closing session. We invite the Rector of the University of Madeira, Silvio Moreira Fernandes, to close up this session.
Boa tarde. Parece ser dos poucos que ainda têm máscara. Há alguma resistência. Quem deveria estar aqui é a minha colega vice-reitora para a Ciência e Tecnologia, mas não, peço desculpa por não estar presente. Renovo os cumprimentos que fiz na sessão inaugural. Há a tradição que não é muito razoável das sessões de encerramento não serem tão fiéricas como as sessões inaugurais, como se o nascimento fosse mais rico do que a morte, mas o que aqui pude acompanhar e pelo feedback que eu fui recebendo, quero aqui dar o testemunho de que este é um grande evento para a Madeira, para a Universidade da Madeira, e é um grande evento para a região autónoma dos Açores, para Canárias e para Cabo Verde. Este lema que aqui está, Think Global, Act Local, pensar globalmente e atuar localmente, é de facto, resume aquilo que nós devemos fazer neste espaço atlântico. E eu aqui aprecio muito que todos nós que aqui estamos trabalhemos afincadamente e com entusiasmo para que estas tecnologias, que são, como aqui bem referiu, que são tecnologias que estão no mundo global competitivamente e que estão também no mundo local competitivamente, não deixem de ser tecnologias e práticas colaborativas, porque nós estamos aqui hoje e isto deve-se, eu aqui queria prestar uma homenagem, deve-se ao trabalho e às ideias que algumas pessoas tiveram para que isto acontecesse. Estou a olhar aqui para o meu colega David Aveiro, sei que foi um dos primeiros a pensar neste assunto, o Dr. Cis Correia da ACIF, e depois com todos os parceiros que foram, e a minha colega também, a Elsa Fernandes, que foram criando nos diversos locais esta ideia para pensar global. E só se entende esta questão das Smart Islands se esse pensar global for refletido nas nossas ilhas e penso, e tenho aliás a certeza, que esta ligação que deve existir sempre entre as academias, as universidades ou as instituições de ensino superior globalmente consideradas e os empreendedores, as empresas, as startups e as empresas já tradicionalmente implantadas nas regiões frutifiquem e deem resultados. Numa próxima ocasião que cá estejamos, queremos ver resultados, queremos ver que alguma coisa mudou. Se não mudou, estamos em presença de mais um projeto. O web tem que existir e tem que corresponder a uma mudança que não é só mudança de práticas, mas também uma mudança de mentalidades. E essa ideia de que a tecnologia, as práticas que a tecnologia necessariamente provocam, devem contribuir para a mudança de mentalidades. E essa mudança de mentalidades deve ser ainda mais inserida no meio da cultura. Eu sou um homem que vem da área da cultura e eu não entendo a cultura como apenas cultura literária ou cultura filosófica ou cultura histórica, mas a ciência, o processo científico faz parte da cultura. Nós estamos aqui a construir o mundo da cultura do futuro e dou-vos os parabéns por isso e que regressem. Estaremos de braços abertos para vos ver novamente e muitos parabéns por o que fizeram até agora e o incentivo para o que vem a seguir e para o melhor sucesso para este projeto. Muito obrigado a todos e boa tarde.
Em nome da organização, agradecemos a todos a vossa presença e damos por encerrado o FIWARE Camp Madeira. On behalf of the organization, we thank you all for your presence and we close now the FIWARE Camp Madeira. See you soon.